Hey guys, okay, so we are going to jump in today's lesson with solving quadratic equations by the first method, which is factoring. All right, so we just reviewed factoring. So if you need more practice, please come in for tutoring. Please practice at home. All right, but we are going to solve quadratic equations by factoring. So take out that sheet that you were given. It should look like this. All right. So notice the page number. What page is it? 5. Yay! So guess where we're going to put it in our binder after we're done with it? That's right. Behind the notes we just took, which was page 4. Okay, so solving quadratic equations by factoring. First, I got a couple of steps for you, and there's only 3. All right, so step 1, take out the GCF. All right, take out the GCF if there is any. Okay, step 2, factor. Factor whether you choose the snowflake method, the box method, or slide stop method. Just factor it. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0 and solve each equation for x. All right, so that's the steps. Step 1, GCF. 2, factor. 3, equal to 0, and solve. Okay, a couple of things, though, for us to remember about quadratics. First of all, quadratics have a degree of 2. What does that mean? That means on the x, the highest exponent you'll see is a squared, an x squared. All right, so write that down if you need it, x squared. They can be binomials or trinomials. Okay, so that means they could be 2-termed or 3-termed. For example, you've seen 3 terms, right? They look like x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay, they look like that. But they could also be 2 terms like this. They could be x squared minus 9. Ooh, yep, that is also a quadratic. Okay, so this one right here is a binomial. This one is a trinomial. All right. And quadratics always have 2 solutions. Always 2. They could be 2 different numbers, okay, or they could be 2 of the same number, but you'll always have 2 solutions. Okay? Okay, let's look at the first example. Let me move it on up. Okay, example 1. I have this written out for you in case you forget later and in case you're super lazy right now and don't take notes. Shame on you if you're like that. Okay, example 1. I have x squared plus 4x minus 12 equals 0. Notice there's an equal sign on this thing now. You know why? Because it's an equation, so I need to solve for the x's. All right, but we got a problem. I got an x squared here and an x here. Can I combine these 2 together? No, they aren't like terms. So how in the world am I going to get the x by itself? One method is factoring. All right, so step 1 is take out the GCF. Well, this number is a 1 and a 4 and a 12. Well, 1 is the lowest number. If I divide everything by 1, it's going to be itself. So there's no GCF to take out, okay? Step 2, I'm going to factor it. All right, so we're going to save some time, and I'm going to tell you what the factors are. It's going to be x plus 6, x minus 2. Notice I brought down the equals 0 still. Okay, so equals 0. We factored it, but we're not done. We got to solve by factoring. Okay, well, how do you solve this? You see how this right here is a factor and this right here is a factor? What are these 2 factors doing with each other? They are multiplying. Okay, because they are multiplying, there's this sweet property called, and I'm going to write it down here. You don't have to write it if you don't want to. It's called the zero product property. It's an awesome property. It essentially says this: anything times 0 is 0. 5 times 0 is 0. A million times a 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. So that means if I got this times this equals 0, one of these suckers has to be 0. All right? So what that property helps us do is separate the x's and solve them. We're going to separate them down the middle and solve them separately. All right, so I'm going to set each factor. So one factor is x plus 6. I'm going to set it equal to 0, and the other factor is x minus 2. I'm going to set it equal to 0. You see I'll have two separate equations here from the two separate sets of parentheses. Remember how I told you with quadratics, how many solutions they always have? That's right, 2. So here's 1 and here's 2. Okay, so now just solve these equations I just made. This is x plus 6. I need the x by itself. How do you get rid of a plus 6? Well, you minus the 6 on both sides. When you do, you get x equals negative 6. There is one answer. X equals negative 6. Now go to the other equation. I got x minus 2 equals 0. Well, I need to move the minus 2. How do you undo a minus 2? You plus a 2 on both sides. Plus 2, plus 2. So those cancel out. So I get x equals a positive 2. All right, so my answers are x equals negative 6 and x equals 2. Now, how in the world can I check these suckers? Well, these we just said are solutions for this equation. So that means if I take this solution and I plug it in, and I do all the multiplying and the adding and the subtracting, it should come out to 0. It should equal 0. All right? If I take this solution and I plug it in for x, so I'd have 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 12, and I do the math, it should also equal 0. Okay, so that is a very quick check on did I do it correctly? Okay? All right, so let's check out example 2. And I'm going to see if I can blow this up really quick because it's kind of tiny. Okay, that helped a little bit. All right, so let's pick, I'm going to pick this color blue, sure. All right, x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. So I need to solve this quadratic. All right, step 1 is take out a GCF. This is a 1, so I got a 1, a negative 5, and a negative 6. 1 is the smallest number, so if I divide everything by 1, it's not going to change anything, so I'm just going to write NA for there is no GCF. Okay, step 2, I need to factor, all right? So I'm going to do, let's do the box this time. But I'm going to do the box. You do whatever method you want to do, okay? All right, so I have an x squared and a negative 6. So this outside will be an x and an x. To get 6, I could do 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. I need them to add together to get a negative 5. I'm thinking do a negative 6 and a positive 1. So let's see if that works. 1 times x is 1x. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. So when I combine these, negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, which is what I wanted. So it looks like I have x plus 1 and x minus 6 as my factors. So I'm going to go ahead and list those over here. X plus 1 and x minus 6. All right, remember, I still keep the equal 0. That way I remember I'm actually trying to solve these suckers. Okay, step 3 is I'm going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. All right, so one factor is x plus 1 and then set to equal to 0. And the other factor is x minus 6 and set it equal to 0. Okay, so now I have to solve this out. This is a one-step equation. So how do you undo plus 1? you undo it by the inverse operation, minus 1. Okay, so 1 minus 1 is 0, so I'm left with the x on the left. Over here, I got 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So there is one solution, x equals negative 1. Over here, I have a minus 6. How do you undo minus? A plus. So I'm a plus 6 to both sides. Negative 6 plus a 6 zeroes out. On the right side, I get 0 plus 6, which is a positive 6. So it looks like my other answer is a 6. Okay. And that's it. So let us check this. Let's check. Check. So I'm going to go to my original problem right up here. All right, I'm actually going to come outside the box. I know y'all don't have room. You might have a very tiny margin. That's cool. You can just watch me if you want. So I got plugging in my first solution into the original. So I got negative 1 squared and then minus 5 times x, but in this case, x is negative 1. And then minus is 6, and then equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to keep the equal 0. We're just going to do math on this side. So negative 1 squared. So that is negative 1 times negative 1. Let's go ahead and reduce this. Negative 5 times negative 1 is a positive 5. And then I got a minus 6. All right. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. So 1 plus 5 is 6. And check it out, 6 minus 6 equals 0. So that means this solution works. It made our equation 0 out. All right, so then I could go back and check x equals 6. So let's plug in a 6 into here. Putting in a 6 in here, that's going to change. And probably the rest of this is going to change. All right. So plugging in a 6 and a 6. So 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. Negative 5 times a 6. Ooh, okay, so negative 5 times a 6 is going to change the sign and make it a negative 30. So I got 36 minus 30 minus 6, and we hope and pray it's 0. So 36 minus 30 is 6. Check it out, 6 minus 6 is 0. So it works. Okay, so that is how you check it. So guess what? If this was multiple choice and you saw these answers and you totally forgot how to solve by factoring, what could you go and do with those answer choices? You could take them and plug them in and see if it works out. And if it works out, then that's the answer. You didn't even know how to solve it. Use those multiple choice answers in your favor. All right. Okay, so that was example 2. Let's check out example 3. And let's pick blue. Okay, step 1 is I need to take out a GCF. So I got a 5, a 30, a 40. Hey, I'm thinking everything can divide by 5. So let's pull out a 5. Look at the x's. I got 2 here, 1 here, none here. So since I have none, I can't pull any out. So just 5 would be my GCF. So divide everything by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 30 divided by 5 is, ooh, not 4. Wah, wah. It is a 6. Just kidding. It's a 6. And then 40 divided by 5 is ocho, and then equals 0.